Good morning, everybody. Welcome in to the Week 3 edition of the Establish the Run First Look Show. I'm your host, Gary Hartman. I'll be with you each and every week on Tuesday morning to get a look ahead at the upcoming main slate on DraftKings. If you have not joined us before, the purpose of this show is to do just that, basically transition our minds from one slate to the next on a 1,000-foot view. We are not going to dive too deep, but we want to kind of start getting our minds in the right mindset of what matchups to attack, what plays stand out for us early on the week, Tuesday morning, before we can overanalyze again what we should be looking forward to. So I hope week 2 was a successful one for you all. If not, doesn't matter. We're forward looking now. Very excited to dive into this one. We have 12 games on the main slate again, and that is no buys yet, but that is because of a Monday night doubleheader once again for week 3. Teams off the main slate here are the Giants and 49ers play Thursday night. And then the Sunday night game is Steelers-Raiders, and double Monday night header is Eagles-Buccaneers, Rams-Bengals. So yes, no Puka Nacua on the main slate. You all can rest easy. As far as game environments are concerned, there is one that stands out like a sore thumb, and we'll get to it, but that is the Vikings-Chargers game is a 54-point over-under. I think probably the highest of the year so far. I don't remember what the Lions-Chiefs was for the opening night, but this has got to be in contention for the highest over-under on the season to this point. So the way you attack that game will be critical to this slate for sure. After that, there's nothing else at 50. There are a couple of games at 48. Broncos Dolphins is 48, and Bears Chiefs is 48. After that, Falcons Lions is 46. Then there's just a bunch of 39 through 44s. So it really is that Chargers Vikings game that stands out as the one that the field will be attacking. That game is in Minnesota as well, so potential track meet for sure there. Team total side of things, though, the Chiefs do have the highest team total with a whopping 30.5. They are 13-point favorites against Chicago this weekend. Obviously, you can understand that Chicago has looked lost. That is a 425 game in Kansas City. So, something that we always also discuss, and we'll use this kind of as a launching pad to go right into quarterback is, can a quarterback, especially a high-priced one, get there in a game where their team is favored by 13 points? My argument would be yes. If you know anything about my background, I'm a tournament player. When I won the Millie Maker in week 8, 2020, it was with a Patrick Mahomes team in which they were favored against the Jets by, I think, 2 touchdowns as well. So the argument is, if they do not only cover that spread, but eclipse their team total of 30 points and get up on something 40 points, a lot of that is likely coming through the air. So, it's, again, we talked last week a little bit about how tough it is to spend up on quarterback these days, but they still have ceilings that are higher than anyone else. Vegas knows what they're doing when they're putting out lines like 30.5 for a team total or a 13-point spread, 48 game total. And we haven't seen that explosion Mahomes game yet this season, but, working his way up in the right direction, right? 20.5 points in week 1, 25.2 points in week 2. I think it's safe to say Travis Kelce was not himself yet last week. Hopefully another week of Kelce being himself. And, you can certainly paint a very, very bullish case on Patrick Mahomes to be the optimal quarterback this week. So no issues getting there. How often you can get there with that price is a different story. But I think if you're playing tournaments this week, you certainly want some exposure to Patrick Mahomes. Going down the list there, Josh Allen, not as tasty of a spot as it was in week 2 at home against the Raiders. Now he travels to Washington, D.C. Think it's fine. And Josh Allen always has a ceiling. There are a lot of other quarterback options on the slate that maybe I like a little bit more than Allen on the road in Washington, but I don't hate it either. 30 points is well within the range of outcomes, so he would make your tournament pool. Lamar Jackson, I was kind of going through this. I think he looks really good this week, actually. We like early season Lamar before any kind of injuries or slowdowns can get to him. Great spot at home against Indianapolis. We just saw what C.J. Stroud did to this team, so certainly aren't scared of this pass defense at all. And he looked pretty good last week, right? Threw the ball 33 times. You'll take that all day. 2 touchdowns through the air, no picks. And even, more importantly, ran the ball 12 times. And that's kind of what we need to see out of Lamar, right? We want those 10 plus carries to eclipse that ceiling. So only ended up with 23, DraftKings points, but I think a big game is in Lamar's bag, and I wonder if he falls through the cracks a little bit this week, just with how many people are going to go to that Chargers Vikings game, and you have Mahomes and Allen around him, and then of course, speaking of that Chargers Vikings game, Justin Herbert. So, they raised his price $500 from $7,000 to $7,500, which for no real reason. He basically has the exact same box scores as Patrick Mahomes if you look at 20 and then 25. I love Justin Herbert. I'm a huge believer in the talent. I think this could be a game where both these sides definitely go off, and I think it's impossible to ignore it. We talked about the 54 points, the track meet here, the vulnerabilities of both defenses. But very expensive at 75. We have not seen a 30-point DraftKings performance out of Justin Herbert since the shoulder injury last year. I know we're working at a very small sample this year so far, and I think we'll get that maybe this week. But you're spending up for Justin Herbert. You got to do it. I want some exposure, but I think and maybe we'll just talk about it now. I think there's an argument to be made that Kirk Cousins is the better play. They also raise him $400. I think only two DraftKings players, if you just take not just the main slate, the entire slate of the weekend last week, eclipsed 30 DraftKings points at the quarterback position. I think it was Daniel Jones and Kirk Cousins. Chad, you can tell me if I'm wrong there, but I believe that is correct. Now he's in the best game environment of the week. Strong chance that Justin Herbert is the higher owned quarterback. And, just with the way this offense is set up, and especially if Alexander Madison's just showing that he maybe doesn't have the goods, they're going to throw so much. Like these 350 and 4, which is basically what he got last week. And I always say for these passing pocket quarterbacks, that's what you basically need on a big main slate. But that's so well within the range of outcomes. So I like Kirk. I like Herbert. If you need the price, if you need the salary, take that $600 discount on Kirk Cousins if you want to attack this game, and just see what ownership comes in at later in the week, because I think that's going to be an interesting way to attack it as well. If Kirk is looking at significant less ownership than Herbert, maybe not. Maybe he isn't, because a lot of people are going to attack the cover boy of this video, which we'll get to in a little bit. Other quarterbacks in this tier, Justin Fields, hard to recommend amongst this group. Just from an eye test perspective, now we're not playing eye test ball, we're playing fantasy football, and we know what Justin Fields' ceiling is. He showed it many times last year, back-to-back 40-point DraftKings performances in the middle of last season. But this Bears team looks bad. Justin Fields looks bad. He's holding the ball for way too long. Now he goes into a gauntlet at Arrowhead. Chris Jones is back another week under his belt. Again, I mentioned the 13-point underdogs. This is like a large field GPP play only this week. The ceiling is still there. Game script should be there for him all week. If they do successfully get pressure on him, maybe he's scrambling a lot. You need like 2-3 rushing touchdowns probably out of him. I think it's definitely in play, but that's a large field tournament option only. And we mentioned a bunch of these good names right around him. Tua's starting to get priced up into this group. You can understand why this Dolphins offense looks like world beaters. Probably should be on our radar most weeks with kind of the high-powered nature of that Dolphins offense. No issues with that at home against Denver, anytime they're at home as well. What his stack options are, condensed target tree, like Tua's a fine play. Trevor Lawrence, right up in that group as well. Very disappointing last week. That game failed in a big way, at least 17-9 in that KC game that did have a 50-point total. Now this week, I think it's a great bounce back spot, right? I mean, you got him at home against the Houston Texans. We're still waiting for that big game of the season. We'll see. I think 68 is on this slate with all these quarterbacks, once again, a lot of good spends is a lot, but you could definitely see. I mean, you saw the game that Anthony Richardson was off to against the Texans defense before he went down 17.7 points or whatever it was in the first quarter, basically. I think that he is definitely in play this week. So, all these guys, once again, you could really make a case for the top 7 quarterbacks. I have the exact same statement last week. And then Anthony Richardson is kind of a wait and see approach because we have no idea what's going on with him and his concussion. So we can't really talk about that. But then Dak, then you get into the mid tier and the same thing last week. I said, okay, top 7 quarterbacks. Fantastic, right? Then you had the mid tier last week, which was included like guys like Geno Smith and Daniel Jones. And both those guys were pretty good. Daniel Jones was the quarterback you needed last week. And would I be surprised if one of these mid-tier quarterbacks, again, eclipses 30 points when all these other high-spend quarterbacks end up in the high 20s or eclipse 30, but the price difference brings you to the mid-tier? No, I wouldn't. So Dak, they hasn't had to do too much. They throw the ball 38 times against the Jets because, they just couldn't, that was the game plan and it was successful. I just mentioned we just saw Daniel Jones did this team. Now, Dak doesn't run the same way Daniel Jones does, but in that, I think that second half of the Arizona Giants game was more what the Cardinals were really like. Dallas, is just off to an obscene start. We're at 70-10. They've outscored opponents so far this year. You could easily see a big Dak Prescott game. I appreciate all the stuff in chat. Yeah, Brian asking, is it recommended to start a running back in a wide receiver quarterback stack? I encourage you all to, if you are a subscriber to Establish the Run, read some of my leverage columns. I talk about this at length. I think it's actually something the field really underutilizes is running backs in stacks. Yes, as Gerald says, maybe you want them to be more high volume pass catching running backs, but it's not necessarily that simple. You don't want just a straight base down back to be in your stack, but I can assure you that running backs get there with their quarterbacks way more than you might think. So when a whole offense hits, you might want to think about attacking that offense in a big way. Other quarterbacks in the mid-tier here, Deshaun Watson is an interesting name. Last night didn't look great. Only 50. He's completing 55% of his passes. He's had 2 tough games in division though to start the season. Now you get a get-right spot at home against Tennessee's pass funnel defense. I think it's worth taking some shots on. They lowered his price to 6,100. So he's low 6Ks. We know he's 11 rushing attempts on the season. I think he's okay. After that, I don't love the 5K tier nearly as much as I did last week. We saw a ton of guys be viable last week, including like CJ Stroud, Baker Mayfield, Ryan Tannehill. All of these guys had solid games to consider. So I don't think we're looking at the same type of group. Stroud would maybe be the interesting option again. Really showing some chops to sit back in that pocket and whip the ball around. Don't love the matchup with Jacksonville as much as Indy, but it's something that if you want to consider a dart throw in the largest MME tournaments, you can. From there, I guess if Minshew plays over Anthony Richardson, you can consider it, but it's a bad matchup, so probably not going there. I like the top 7 guys, like a couple of these mid-tier options. Again, a week where it's going to be tough to condense your quarterback pool, though. All right, let's go over to running back, and a little bit of a different week here because no Christian McCaffrey on the main slate. Likely no Austin Eckler on the main slate. I think he is seemingly he'll probably miss another week. Staley said there's no timeline from this ankle injury, so it seems like it'll be the Josh Kelly show again. And of course, unfortunate for all of us after that gruesome Nick Chubb injury last night, but no Nick Chubb too. So our top running backs on this slate are Tony Pollard, Bijan Robinson, Derrick Henry are only 3 guys over 7K. Pollard absolutely in play. Saquon had 2 total touchdowns last week. The role is excellent, and he's involved in the pass game. I love Pollard. They raised his price up to reflect the matchup, but I have no issues with it. If you can get there, he's probably one of your top spends on the slate. Could be a pivot to some of the receiver spends. We'll talk about those guys in a bit. Bijan, gotta love what's going on with Bijan. Really set up for success here. Over 20 DraftKings points in each of his first 2 career NFL games. The yards per carry is incredible. The targets are there. The receptions are there. And he's doing all this in a split backfield. We know how run heavy the Falcons want to be. Yeah, Chris says Bijan still feels underpriced. I think I agree here. I don't know if he'll fall through the cracks as much as he did last week, where he's like single digit, 7% ownership or whatever in large field, but sign me up for some Bijan. Last week was more of a Henry week for me than this week, going on the road to Cleveland. I like cold weather, late season Derrick Henry more than I like early season Derrick Henry. And I also like Henry when it's more matchup dependent. He's fine. Obviously, we know he has a ceiling. He could break off for one of his 3 touchdown games at any time. I don't have an issue with it, but I do prefer Travis Etienne for $500 less against Houston for sure. We just saw what Zach Moss did to this run defense. The role for Etienne is excellent. He's getting a little bit of Tank Bigsby around the goal line stuff, but I'm not worried at all there. He's looking like a value at his ADP for sure. Green Bay, it's just a wait and see. AJ Dillon looks like he runs in mud. They definitely want Aaron Jones back in the worst way. No thank you really on Ramondre Stevenson against the Jets in New York. That's just a large field, makes your pool type play for the largest field tournaments. Gibbs, I'm assuming he's going to be really popular. I don't think David Montgomery is going to play. I just saw that they signed Bam Knight to their roster, Zonovan Knight, ex-Jet, with the David Montgomery injury. Campbell said he wants to get Gibbs more involved. Now he might not have a chance. Now he might not have a choice. What you'd love to see out of Jahmyr Gibbs is 7 catches on 9 targets last week for 40 yards. He's going to be involved in the pass game like that. And now he's going to get an increase in run work, and the matchup is fine. Atlanta's got a pretty good D, but matchup is fine at home here. Yeah, Gibbs is going to be popular and for good reason. I'm assuming he's going to be in cash consideration. We'll see how that shakes out throughout the week. Starting to get a little scared off of Cook now. Like, obviously he got there, James Cook, and the role's really good, and he's efficient, right? 17 for 123 on the ground, still did have 4 targets, but Damian Harris, Latavius Murray stealing goal line work. Both those guys getting in a little bit in 4 and 2 minutes. Seems to be a little bit of a 3-headed monster. So I'm worried about the explosive ceiling, but 6,400 is like the max that I want to pay on James Cook. So if he gets above this in future weeks, we'll have to start having another conversation, because I think that 22.9 point game with the role of those other guys might be what his ceiling is right now. Keep an eye. It's obviously not an offense you want to invest in. So just something I'm monitoring moving forward. James Conner last week was definitely more of a James Conner game than this week. If you want to bring back in Dallas stuff, I guess, just because the role is going to be there, but he wasn't even catching the ball last week. So probably not. Kenneth Walker, or Chalker the third, if you will. This is the look at Kenneth Walker's game logs here. This is the tail of Kenneth Walker. We got a 5.3 yards per carry game and a 2.5 yards per carry game. He's like the boomer bust player of the century, but I think you can invest in Seattle a little bit. 6,200 is totally fine. We know he's got a ceiling. I like Walker. Mostert, excellent on Sunday night. Really kind of has his backfield to himself as far as the bell cow role of it's concerned. We'll see what happens when Jeff Wilson comes back. But Devon Achane was active, not involved at all. Salvon Ahmed's still the backup. Mostert right now is a very strong play. He's got a floor. He's in an offense we want to play. He's the guy in that backfield right now. No issues whatsoever. Already mentioned the Detroit stuff with Montgomery. We're waiting on a Madison get right spot. You would think this is it, right? You've been able to run on the Chargers for years now. This is the game you want to invest in. Maybe he falls through the cracks a little bit because everyone's attacking the pass game. So a way to get different. Maybe it's Alexander Madison, the guy like never fumbled before, then he fumbles twice or whatever in last week. And obviously it looks bad on the ground. This was kind of the debate between fantasy analysts all offseason. Is role or talent going to win out here? So far, lack of talent seems to be winning out. But we're only 2 games in. Role should still be there. I like investing in Alexander Madison, especially if the field's going to get off him for sure. Brian Robinson's been really impressive. Was optimal last week. Had got in the end zone twice. Has a little bit of a receiving role as well. No issues there. Miles Sanders, just meh. I don't think I'm going there. And, every, guys down here, the Jets stuff, Breece Hall, I think had 4 carries in week 2 after being so dominant in week 1. He's got too much of a talent that I'm never leaving him out of my player pool. But that offense now with Zach Wilson at the helm and that split backfield, it's a little bit scary to invest into. Javonte Williams, definitely start. I think he's reeling a little bit. Now we got Jaleel McLaughlin involved in that backfield as well. Has not been super efficient. Does have 9 targets on the season. You like to see that. This matchup is solid for him. I don't mind going there in tournaments. They raised Zach Moss all the way up to 5,500, but the guy had like 100% of the Colts running back snaps. Looked pretty good too. The matchup, not great against Baltimore, but you can include him if you want 5,500 back in there. I think Kelly, I'm curious if the field goes off of him now. I doubt it. He's going to still project very well, and he's in that big game, but maybe he won't be 30% owned like he was last week. Maybe it's more like 20. Ended up being bad chalk for sure, but going to be someone that you're going to have to be considering again, as they didn't price him up too much. And then you go down here. I mean, it's impossible for me to recommend Dameon Pierce to you with the state of that Texans offensive line. They just can't run block at all. You got the Chiefs guys, which I think, again, chat mentioning running backs stacked with quarterbacks. I think you could certainly do it. McKinnon would be the one to do that with. But, if you really want to go all in on a Chiefs like 40-10, you never know. Maybe even Pacheco. I think that's okay. And then, down here, all guys you could take some shots on. You got the Bears guys, you got the Ravens guys. Jerome Ford, I'm sure, is going to be like the chalk of the week here at 4,800. But terrible matchup. I mean, it's basically the exact same spot Josh Kelly was just in, right? We talked about Josh Kelly, super cheap, free square in cash, but gets the Titans run D. We talked about the Titans being passed one. They were a very good run defense. But Jerome Ford looked amazing last night. Going to have that bell cow roll to himself. What do you like? Do you like the guaranteed work, or you like the bad matchup? Guaranteed work and cheap price, but bad matchup. So, make that decision for yourself. Let's go over to receiver. It was hard. I really like to try to make the cover boy of the thumbnail of this video to be a more under the radar guy, but impossible this week with Justin Jefferson at home facing up against the Los Angeles Chargers. I mean, he's the best receiver in the sport. Tyreek Hill has an argument, but Justin Jefferson's the best receiver in the sport. And you can see it there, 150 yards in each of his first 2 weeks. One was against Philadelphia. Now he heads back home on a long rest week against the Chargers, like I don't see that many ways that he fails this week. So he's probably a cash game lock if you get up to it. He's super expensive, obviously. Tyreek, massive ceiling, kind of predictably what I thought the Belichick would try to take him out of the game, and still got 5 for 40 and a touchdown on 9 targets. So somewhere between week 1 and week 2, I think, and week 2 for Tyreek Hill this week. Stephon Diggs, matchup's totally fine here, returning to his home area. Went to Maryland, going to home to DC. Hopefully he comes out and balls out. Like a more in Josh Allen stuff, but he's a fine one-off play if you need a high-end receiver and you can't get up to the other guys. Amon-Ra sucked to see him go out of that game a little for part of the game. I think he could have had a much bigger game against Seattle in week 2, but still ended up with 6 for 102. This is like he's like the full point PPR king. He'll be in play for cash every week. No issues at home for sure. CeeDee Lamb has been off to a blistering start as well, against the Jets team. Didn't really have Sauce Gardner on him because he was in the slot. Didn't really, move around with him. But 11 for 143, like he's just the volume is going to be crazy for CD. I think CD is awesome any week. Keenan Allen. So here's the thing. I might do some research on this for the leverage column this week, but anytime that Austin Eckler is out, it really seems like Keenan Allen's the biggest beneficiary of that. And we really saw that last week, right? 8 for 111 and 2. Age model does not seem to be getting Keenan Allen right now. Still seems to be Justin Herbert's favorite target. 7,600 raises price up a little bit, but again, in this track meet, you're going to have to pay to get there. He's your primary option for sure. Jalen Waddle, we'll see. Looks like concussion protocol for him. Can't really talk on that. Still waiting for a breakout game for him. Ridley, really disappointed. Came back crashing down to earth in week 2. I think he's more close to the week 1 Ridley that we saw, but only 2 of 8 targets in week 2. Busted at his chalk. Has a bounce back spot here for sure against Houston. Olave last night, another 11 targets. I really love Olave's role this year. Not the easiest matchup in going into Green Bay, but they might have to throw a little bit. Metcalf came back into the game after the rib injury, so not too much concern there. Matchup's okay. Carolina's defense is fine. I think they're missing J.C. Horton still. Don't hate that. It's really, they have brought Garrett Wilson's price tumbling back down to the 6K range. Don't think I'm going there. I think that that Belichick takes Garrett Wilson out of that game. Denver guys, I like them as bring back in Miami stuff. I don't know. It's a little bit too spread out for me right now, right? You got Judy now back. He had 5 targets. Sutton's around. Marvin Mims getting these deep shots now, and he was kind of the guy that paid dividends in week 2. And then you got Troutman out there running routes. Brandon Johnson out there, Hail Mary. Running back guys are all getting some targets. So I just don't know how I feel about this with an offense that I don't fully buy into yet. So I kind of want correlation on those Denver guys. Going down from there, Lockett always going to be in play for tournaments. Hopkins, they bring price coming down after kind of being used as a little bit of a decoy in week 2. He's another week separated. Tough matchup against Cleveland, but targets should be there for sure for him. Pittman, yeah, looks like he can throw against the Ravens more than you can run against them. His targets have been elite. I want to see if Richardson plays, but man, especially in full point PPR, I think this is a guy we could definitely be considering at his tag. Like he still remains a little bit too cheap, I think, for what his upside is. I'm not going to break down the Green Bay receiver room right now, fully dependent on Christian Watson's health, but these are guys with Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, and Romeo Dobbs that we've heard from so far this year. So it's going to be a spot that you're going to want to at least consider. Gabe Davis always in play in these 5K tags just because of the boom bust nature. He was 8 yards away from certainly breaking the slate with 21 points, 6 for 92 and a touchdown. Again, being on the field every Josh Allen snap is pertinent. Plus Stephon Diggs gets all that cornerback 1 attention. There are going to be spike weeks. There's also going to be the single digit weeks quite often. There's going to be spike weeks. Amari Cooper looks great. Surprisingly played last night. Surprisingly had 10 targets, 7 for 90. No concern whatsoever. And now you get him priced back down to 5,700. It's like seems mispriced to me at home against the Tennessee pass funnel. Amari Cooper's an excellent play. I'm assuming he's going to be in play for cash as well. Definitely in play. DJ Moore, want him on the other side of Chiefs stuff. McLaurin and the Washington stuff is fine. I think, if Washington can push Buffalo, that game could be sneaky. So I don't mind McLaurin or Dotson. Addison, still firmly playing behind KJ Osborne, but seems to be the bigger play guy, right? Has scored a touchdown in each of his first 2 NFL games. So Addison, Osborne, Jefferson, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, all these guys are absolutely in play. I skipped over Mike Williams. He's 6K, but raised him up for the matchup a little bit, but had 13 targets last week. I'm still a huge believer in Big Mike's talent. I love Mike Williams once again this week. So all those guys are going to be in play for you this week. Christian Kirk, great bounce back game for him. 14 targets, 11 catches. I like this Jags offense, and I think you could do double stack stuff. You could do whether it's with Ridley, Kirk, Ingram, Ridley, Ingram, ETN a little bit. Like you can get silly with it. 5,400 is totally cheap enough for him. We finally got the Nico Collins breakout game. I mentioned the CJ Stroud stuff. Gotta love Nico Collins, 7 for 146 and a touchdown. Matchup's fine here. Game environment's fine here. I like him on the other side of Jag stuff. I don't mind him as a one-off play. London still just perpetually at 5K. Did find pay dirt this week. 6 for 67, found the end zone, 7 targets. At 5K, I'm going to keep being in on Drake London, and this matchup's pretty good too. So anything under 5K, please do go get a subscription to Established Run. Check out Cheap Wide Receiver volume article that I write. It will be out on Thursday afternoon. All right, let's go over to tight end quickly. I mentioned Kelsey definitely didn't look 100%, did find the end zone, did still earn 9 targets. Travis Kelce's Travis Kelce. I don't want to overthink it. If you want to invest in that Chiefs offense, as I said, highest team total of the week, biggest spread of the week. If they get there, it probably becomes on the back of Mahomes. What does that mean? Good chance it comes on the back of Travis Kelce too. If it pays off the 7,200 tag, that's a different price. I mean, that's a different story, but you definitely want some Travis Kelce exposure. Hawkinson, highest paid tight end in history, looks pretty good through 2 weeks. Found end zone twice on long rest here against the Chargers. Another way to attack that game. Mark Andrews was the optimal tight end because tight end still completely sucks. So even at 6,300, his 5 for 45 and a touchdown was optimal for you last week. We know we love the Mark Andrews-Lamar connection. No issues there. And then you take a big jump down in price to sub 5K. You got Evan Ingram. Had his 8 targets. Again, I like mixing and matching those Jaguars pass catchers. Kmet still overpriced here for sure. If you play Fields, you might want Kmet in there. Totally. So from there, Njoku, don't love the role compared to last year. I have to look at some of the usage stuff from last night. I have not gotten there yet, but I know his week 1 usage, not great. Did catch all 4 of his targets for 48 yards last week, and it's a good matchup. So I definitely want some exposure in tournaments. They've bumped Hunter Henry's price way up to 4,100 here, as he's been excellent through his first 2 weeks. Seems to be the favorite target in this new Patriots pass offense for Mac Jones. Sam Laporta in play for you. 11 targets through his first 2 NFL games. Kyle Pitts, I don't know. Sure. You could keep taking shots on Kyle Pitts. He's now sub 4K. I feel like we get the same story every year. His price keeps sinking like a stone, and yet we still see nothing. Can't think that way as a tournament player, though. You got to be ready to strike. After that, you got a bunch of guys: Kincaid, Musgrave. We'll see about Taysom Hill and Jamal Williams' status. So Taysom Hill might be in play. They basically gave him the RB1 role after Jamal Williams went down last night. So something to consider. Chika Okonkwo, I like. Dawson Knox is in play. You got a bunch of guys here as punts for sure. Durham Smythe, only 2,900. All right. Under 30 minutes. I know it's rambling. It's fast. Hopefully it gets you in the right mindset. Excited for this week. I liked week 2 slate. I know some people in chat saying that they're happy to move on. I thought it was a fun one. This one's somewhat similar, 12 games. One that stands out, like KC Jacksonville did last week. I think this one has a better chance of hitting in Chargers, Minnesota, but you never know. Want to make sure you have all your spots covered. If you are not subscribed to Establish the Run, please consider it. Go over to establishthерun.com. You got everything you possibly need for the week. I know our waivers column just went up. Sam Sherman just put up for your season-long stuff. If you want to be thinking about how much fab you should be spending on guys like Jerome Ford or Matt Breida. The team-by-team pods for Adam and Evan will be coming out later today. And we just got you covered all week here on the YouTube page as well. We'll be live, I think, not sure if it'll be free or not, but Thursday night for the Showdown show with Cody Main and myself for the Giants 49ers. And gonna be a fun week. Be sure to check out everything we have going on. I appreciate you joining me. Please do give a thumbs up on this video and hit the subscribe button on the Established Run YouTube page. Really helps us out a lot. Appreciate everyone. I will catch you all next week. Good luck in week 3.